Hi, everyone. Welcome to this year's Why Race Matters in the Workplace virtual panel discussion. My name is Ron Sidwell, one of the academic advisors here. I know that we're not able to be in the Tuscan Ballroom this year, kind of enjoying a nice dinner, a nice evening dinner, and just having a good, fruitful discussion. But thank you for joining. And I'd like to kick it off to Professor Dutra in the Reiman School of Finance, who is this year's moderator.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ron, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. Undoubtedly, there are many pressures on everyone's time. We thank our panelists for sure. They're stepping away from a busy and hectic work week, I'm sure. And our students, of course, have many pulls on their time as well. And as Ron, you previously stated, undoubtedly some level of screen fatigue. I'm at home homeschooling children, and it's a push and a struggle to get them to stay in front of the screen for a long period of time. So again, it just underscores how appreciative we are that you all are here with us today. We only have roughly an hour, so I won't be before you long. We have a very knowledgeable and esteemed panel before us today. And I only want to start with a couple of ground rules. One, there really aren't any ground rules. We want everyone, but we do want everyone to be comfortable. So we understand the topic may be somewhat sensitive, but that's why we are here, because we don't discuss race often enough. And so we want you, both our panelists, obviously, and certainly our students that are in attendance, to feel comfortable to present your questions and know that this is a safe space to do so. So again, without further ado, I am going to jump right into this so that we have both enough time for each one of our panelists and so that we allow time for questions. We will have a 40-20 split. So we will allow 40 minutes for the panel and roughly 20 minutes for student engagement and questions. All right. And hello, Laura, how are you?
Hi, very well, thank you.
All right, wonderful. So without further ado, we will go down the panel, and I just want to hear from each one of our individual panelists. Can you please each of you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and who you are. Ashley?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Happy to be here with you all. I am Ashley Wilson, the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at SCL Health. SCL Health is a faith-based nonprofit, roughly $2.8 billion health system. We are headquartered in Broomfield, Colorado, and provide coordinated care through our 8 hospitals, more than 100 physician clinics, home health, mental health, and hospice care services, primarily in the states of Colorado and Montana, and then we have some safety net clinics in the state of Kansas. I've been with the health system, it'll be 7 years at the end of July, in a variety of capacities. Came on board as a senior legal analyst in the legal division, had the ability and opportunity to start to create the work in this space, and in turn create my roles in this space. Starting out as the program manager and now the director leading the work. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ashley.
I'll go next. My name is Deanna Harm. I am currently the Senior Director and HR Business Partner for TIAA. We used to be TIAA CREF, but we are now TIAA. So I spend my day working with our senior leadership team. So I primarily support our wealth management organization. And so this is a large group of individuals who are financial advisors and wealth management advisors. So they spend their day partnering with individuals who are preparing for retirement at any stage of their life. And so I currently lead a team of 3 HR business partners, and we support the wealth management organization. And TIAA is based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We have major offices in New York, in Louisville, Texas, and then I am in our Denver hub, but currently working from my kitchen as we move to remote work. Gosh, I want to say about 6 weeks ago or so.
Hi, I'll go next. I am Monica Williams, and I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion professional. I recently transitioned from a role at Denver International Airport, the #1 economic generator in the Rocky Mountain region, from the role of Director of Equity and Inclusion, where I led the creation and adoption of diversity, equity, and inclusion principles, along with future workforce development and our civil rights programs. I recently transitioned to the Equity Project, LLC, which is a consulting firm where we specialize in really partnering with organizations across national organizations, really, and helping them to create equitable processes, practices across their organizations that acknowledges the benefits of diversity, equity, equality, and inclusion and belonging. And so I'm very happy to be here today. I am a Daniels alum. I graduated some time ago with an executive MBA from Daniels, so I'm super proud of that and happy to be there. I've been a judge for the Inclusive Excellence Case Competition since it started, and so very proud of that also. So very connected and invested in the Daniels community.
Go Daniels.
Hi, everyone. Oh, Beatrice can go. She can go. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Beatrice Opoku-Asare. I'm Global Director for Inclusion and Diversity at Newmont Corporation. Newmont is a gold mining company, primarily the largest gold mining company in the world. I've been in mining for close to 20 years, and this year is my 10th anniversary with Newmont. I've worked across our operations in the mining operations, and I'm now working from the corporate office, supporting our board and our executive leadership team to progress our inclusion and diversity journey. I have 2 kids. My son is 5 and my daughter is 8. So if you do hear any kids in the background, that's what's happening here. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, I think I can go now.
Yes,
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Scott. I'm the Group Talent Acquisition Manager for Enterprise Holdings here in Colorado and Southern Wyoming. Enterprise Holdings is the parent name of Enterprise, Alamo, and National Rent-A-Car, the largest transportation provider in the world. We try and be a total transportation solution provider for our customers. So most know us for renting cars, primarily in the insurance replacement sector, as well as retail and corporate business. But we also offer a lot of other services such as commercial truck. We have car dealerships. We also have a business rental sector that provides van pooling and commuting. So I had all of our talent acquisition initiatives for the state in Southern Wyoming. I used to be a team of 5, and unfortunately due to the coronavirus, I'm now a team of 1, obviously working from home. Let's see here. I also help chair the diversity and inclusion initiatives for our newly formed team here locally in Colorado. Personally speaking, I've got 2 kids as well, Beatrice, so I did feed them some peanut butter and jelly before this call and threaten them, but there is always that possibility that they'll walk in during this time. They're 7 and 4. And then I'll be celebrating 13 years with Enterprise. So just a little bit of my background and personal information.
Okay, thank you all. I also have 2 children, so I think I'll echo the same. If you see 2 twin boys run past my background, actually that's why I do the virtual background, so it's less prone to happen. But without further ado, let us jump into the reason why we are here today. We're here to talk about diversity and inclusion. And as Ron mentioned earlier, we started this whole panel, we started this forum because we heard from our students that while at the university level, there may be more discussion around diversity, there seems to be a lack of discussion around diversity within Daniels, which is the College of Business at the University of Denver. So it opened up this opportunity for us to invite in amazing panelists like yourself and learn what questions students may have around diversity. So let's start with a very basic question. I'd like to hear from you, those who wish to reply. First, can you tell us what diversity actually means? I think we use that term a lot, and I'm not quite clear that others are clear what that actually means. So can you tell us what diversity means to you and why diversity is actually essential in the workplace? And we can start with that question.
So I'll go. I like to define diversity in the broadest sense possible. So beyond the legal categories, now the legal categories, race, gender, sexual orientation, all of those things are still very much important. So representation is important. But when I think about diversity, I define it broadly as any difference that makes a difference. And so when you have a more broad definition that goes beyond the legal categories, you're able to identify multiple reasons why people disconnect. People don't always disconnect beyond race and gender. And I like to tell this about, do all women get along? Usually people will say, no, all women do not get along. There are other reasons why there's other diversities that we have that can cause kind of friction or cause, a rub within a workplace. But the other thing that is important about diversity in identifying various diversities is that there's strength in diversity. There's strength in having a view of various backgrounds, levels of expertise, communication styles, thought, the way that people process information. So the various diverse things that make us diverse beyond the legal categories are also important. So that's why I like to define it more broadly.
And I'll just piggyback off of that because, it's very similar to how our business talks about it. And when we think about diversity, it's a matter of varied thoughts, opinions, and experiences. So as you come to the table, do you have the right members to have a really fruitful discussion and move the business forward? So diversity, not only is it the right thing to do, but it's good business. It makes good business sense to have varied thoughts and opinions and experiences come to the table, because then you're arriving at an outcome that potentially makes sense for your client base who is also diverse and has different opinions, thoughts, and experiences. And so it takes work to maintain. It takes active participation. It takes acknowledgement. It takes work to get it done. But if you do it, it makes good business sense and it's the right thing to do. And so a lot of organizations are in different spots, I would say, on the spectrum of really having true diversity and bringing it in to every discussion, every meeting, every conversation. And there's still work to be done. But I also think that there's a lot of good work that has already happened that has helped propel businesses and organizations forward.
So I guess what I will add to this is in terms of why it's important in the workplace. One of our board members explains the importance of diversity in these ways that I'm going to explain. So she talks about how as board members, they're supposed to be managing risks. And in managing those risks, you want to have different thoughts and different backgrounds and experiences at the table, because what one person sees as a risk is not what the other person might see, or the other person might not even see it at all. So it really is a way of managing business risks to make sure that you don't have groupthink at the decision-making table. The second importance of having diversity at the table is really managing unintended consequences, right? So you've made a decision because you all have similar backgrounds, you're looking at the decision in the same way. I have a 5-year-old, so if a decision is being made to have a call at 6 a.m., it's not gonna work for me. If I'm at the table, I probably am going to bring that up. And so it's really managing unintended consequences where you didn't really expect that. You have the best of intention in terms of the decision that has been made, but there are repercussions of that decision because you did not have a diverse you don't have diversity at the table. So those are the two things that I wanted to add. And I think for me personally, having diversity in the workplace creates a sense of belonging. When you go somewhere where you don't see people who are like you, sometimes you don't notice it as much as when you see people who are like you. So when you see people who are like you, you get that sense of belonging, and that improves engagement in the workplace for businesses.
Just to kind of add, I really actually like Beatrice's description. I think for us, it looks a little bit different in healthcare just because of our patient access and touch. And so with the way that I look at it is really diversity is about recognizing and then celebrating just those rich dimensions that make each individual unique and make them who they are. I think certainly when we're looking at the importance of diversity and really for us, health equity and inclusion, it's about ensuring that we are reflective of our patient population and the communities that we serve. And so just recently, and we are a member of the Institute for Diversity and Health Equity. They're an affiliate of the American Hospital Association. And a lot of their specific to race demographic data shows that 32% of patients across the country were minorities, 37% of the US population, only 11% of minorities are represented in the C-suite for health systems. So when we look at our CEOs, our CFOs, our COOs, making those critical decisions at our hospitals and health systems, there's certainly a disparity, a disproportionate representation there, and something that we really look to address. And so I think, again, for us, it goes back to really making sure we're reflective of those patients that we serve in the communities that we're in.
All right, I can actually a follow-up question to that. So each of you are very well versed in diversity and inclusion within your work environment. What advice might you offer to someone who is in the C-suite and is facing a diversity or inclusive excellence issue? In what ways can they foster a more inclusive environment? And so that question is from the C-suite level. Mm-hmm. Now from the student level, because we have a lot of students that are watching and will watch this presentation, what advice might you offer someone just starting out who doesn't have the pull of someone in the C-suite? What types of actions can they do as they start in the workforce to sort of incentivize or foster a more inclusive work environment?
I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Laura.
Go ahead, Laura.
Sorry. I think for me, this response is similar for either the student or the C-suite. Here at Enterprise, we have several leadership forums at this point that assist females and minorities. We have employee resource groups for, working moms or working parents or ally groups. And they didn't all exist from the start or of the foundation of our company. And although I wasn't around with Enterprise 60 some years ago, I would make the assumption that someone just felt super passionate about the need for these types of forums and groups, that they had a voice. And they spoke up when they knew it was necessary and did it in a very professional way. since coming into talent acquisition, you know, I did not study human resources in college. I was a finance major. I thought I was going to stay in business, on the business side of things my entire career, and I just kind of fell into talent acquisition. So when I came into that role and diversity and inclusion efforts was put onto my responsibility, I'll be honest, at that time, I was like, okay, like what does that mean for me personally? I didn't necessarily have a passion for it at that time. And granted, yes, I'm a female in a more male-dominated industry, and certainly growing up throughout my childhood, just again, more personal information that based on diversity, I grew up with a single father. So for me, I've been raised to have a more independent personality. I'm more dominant in nature, more blunt in my communication. But I didn't always portray that in the professional world, but certainly having some of these forums that we now have to go into and find that relatability and be able to express, you know, any opinions or thoughts on initiatives that our company needs to take for in the future is necessary. So hopefully I'm not talking in circles here, but I think for either way, either side of the table, it's just feeling comfortable to speak up and saying, this is something that's necessary in our organization, and having a plan to execute it and the impact that you'll have on the demographic that you're going to serve.
Was Monica, were you about to jump in? I'm not quite sure who was.
Sure. I was going to allow any of the other panelists to go if they'd like. So if you're talking about the C-suite, and I would say on a campus environment also, what is important and what I found is important is to create an environment where people are respected and valued and appreciated, and their diversity is important. I believe diversity is a strength. It's not a deficit. It's not something that we got to fix our diversity. No, diversity is a strength that an organization can leverage for the betterment of their business, for the bottom line, for the culture, in bringing in better ideas, in troubleshooting, problem solving. You know, having more diversity is a business imperative. And so from a C-suite perspective, that culture needs to be such where the leaders in the organization appreciate that and understand that diversity is really where the secret sauce is. And one thing that organizations that focus just strictly on representation, or we need to hire X amount of women or X amount of Black folks or whatever that demographic is, unless there is an environment that is inclusive, and unless there's an environment that is supportive of the diversity that they bring into the organization, they're going to hemorrhage those same people that they spent so much time recruiting. They will not stay in the organization. They will not feel comfortable. They will not feel valued. And so the primary thing that I would express to a C-suite and to a student campus is to appreciate and value and respect everyone for the difference and the value and the strengths that they bring forward to the organization and to the campus, and appreciate them. Don't try to put everybody in one box. Let people be who they are.
Does anyone else want to?
Yes, I was going to add that to Monica's point, diversity would not work without an inclusive culture, right? So if you have a homogeneous group and you're just going for the numbers and you decide to make it more diverse from a numbers perspective, that homogeneous group usually is not ready for that diversity, even though they have that. It's inclusion, which is how we use that diversity, creating safe spaces, creating that sense of belonging, that enables you to tap into that diversity, because it does two things. It enables those bringing the difference to the table to feel safe to bring that difference to the table and not suppress the difference. And then it enables the organization to lean into and leverage that difference. So for culture change efforts, usually there are three ways that you can change that. You can change it using the symbols, just simple things. So I'm originally from Ghana, which is in the western part of Africa. If I come to your office, Deanna, and I see a Ghana flag, a small one, really tiny on your table, it's gonna be impressive to me that you even know where Ghana is and you have a flag of Ghana on your table. So those are what you call symbols, simple things. Like at work, you know, each of our offices has a small rainbow flag. If you're an ally, you put the rainbow flag just at the entrance of your office so people know that it's a safe space. That's what a symbol is, very basic. The other way you can change cultures is by changing behavior. So you're trying to train people, improve awareness, give them actions to try and change the culture. And the last one is systems, right? So behavior change is tough. I know that because I was talking about my kids. Like my 5-year-old, you would say one thing and he would do it again in like 30 seconds, right? So behavior change, especially for adults, is really difficult. But if you use systems, example, blind resumes, inclusive job postings, those are more at an organizational level where leaders in the C-suite can make those decisions, so that you take a little bit of the power away from behavior change and make it a norm in the system. So everybody, when you're doing performance ratings, you do like the legal review where it would tell you change this, change this. You don't question the legal review. You just accept what the legal review is suggesting to you. Don't use these words. So it's the same way you do that. You try to change the system to enable the culture change. And you can do it whether you are at a student level or you are in an organization.
And I'll just, you know, add, I couldn't agree more with the things that you mentioned, and it is very challenging. A lot of the conversations that I have with my senior leaders say, it starts with, okay, so let's start with you. What does this look like? What can you do personally to be more inclusive? Don't worry about anybody else. Let's work with you as a leader of this organization. And then also, you know, what does success look like? Why is this important to you? Let's start with reflection. And then from there, you know, I can be your coach and I can help guide, and let's start to make, you know, even baby steps in having a more inclusive environment. What are you doing on those things that may provide challenge for folks to feel like they can speak up at the table? And then how can we start there? And then from there, let's continue to move forward and really make steps in diversity and inclusion in this organization. The difference, I would say, you know, from a student standpoint is, it may take time to really get there, right? So if you're starting with a new organization, it may not make sense to come in and really express your opinion right off the bat. It might make sense to sit and listen and ask questions without the desire to respond immediately with your own opinion. It might make sense just to sit and observe and listen, and then start to build those relationships. So by that time, you're able to really move forward and add an incredible amount of value, because you've taken the time to really understand and then speak. And so sometimes that can be challenging, but you know, that's often my word of advice, which is come in and just be a fly on the wall, listen in, take down notes, and then start to really make progress on what that looks like for you and how you can then bring your own personal value to the organization.
I appreciated each one of those perspectives. I just have two quick comments and a follow-up question. I really appreciate what you said, Beatrice, when you said behavioral changes can be very difficult, particularly for adults. And as Deanna stated, particularly when you are in a male-dominated field, like business, finance, marketing, accounting, all of these areas. So let's be real for a second. Here we are, a panel of preachers preaching to other preachers, right? So you all embrace and accept inclusivity and diversity, but we are in an environment right now, and have been for a while, but I think it's very ever present, and we're very aware of the political environment we're in right now, where inclusivity, there can be a lot of pushback, and diversity, there can be a lot of pushback there. So again, let's be real for the person who may not sing this song, who may not sing diversity praises. Can you give an example of when you've received pushback? When you've walked into a room so enthusiastic with your speech about, oh, diversity is great, inclusivity is powerful, and it's risk leveraging, and all of these wonderful things we've discussed today, and someone flat out said to you, I don't get it. I don't get it. We don't have time for this. We're here to make money. If it's not making money, I don't want to hear about it. How do you overcome those no's? How do you overcome that perspective?
I can jump in real quick with an example. I'll be brief, Ashley. So we actually had an area manager who is a minority leader in our organization here locally. And he was having a real hard time with being asked to step up and help mentor other minority leaders here locally, because he didn't want to be known as, well, I'm just another manager who's a minority. He didn't see himself as that way. So we really had to get him to rethink why we were asking him to step up in this way, and actually connected him with another minority leader in our organization in a completely different state to then tell their story on how, you know, when they were coming up in the system and found another minority leader in the organization and finally saw someone obtaining these higher level positions that looked just like them, where maybe locally they hadn't seen that, it gave them so much more hope for the future within our company. And once he started having these conversations with more senior leaders in a similar position, he realized that he wanted to own that responsibility and give back in that way, and be able to mentor our younger managers here locally so that they could see someone in a position that they desired in the future that they could relate to, which would help them progress and see themselves here within enterprise long term. So it didn't have anything to do with necessarily the bottom line, but just being seen more as a visual mentor or leader in the company. When someone was already visually, you could tell that they were a minority in the organization and didn't want to identify as that.
So I was just, for me, I think as I shared in the beginning, this work is new to SCL. It did not exist. Before I got here, there wasn't a lot of conversation happening around the work in this space. And so there was a lot of pushback when I started having some of those tough conversations with our leaders about what this work should look like, would look like. So two things for me. One, I recognized really early that if this was not a strategic imperative for the organization, it wasn't going to move. The other thing is really meeting people where they are at. And so help me understand what this work looks like to you or for you, or how you feel it could be integrated in our organization, versus me talking at them and saying, this is what I think we should do, or this is how it should look. Those things I found to be very beneficial for how we move forward in terms of meeting them where they were at, also asking them to think about what strategic imperatives specific to their division were already in place, or kind of what they were hoping to do for their team, and how perhaps that already builds into what we want to do in this space. We aren't quite there yet, but even when we think about the strategic imperative piece, when you build this into their ARC compensation, that gets a lot of people's attention. It isn't necessarily the way you always want to move the work, because you want them to respect and understand why, but I think going back to money and the impact it has on the organization, that's also a way to really get people to start thinking about folding this work more into how they move as a division.
Quick one to add. So Newmont is in the mining industry, and everybody knows that there's not a lot of women when it comes to race and multicultural people. There's a lot of that, but for women, it's close to 15% globally in the entire industry. So you can, when we started the efforts, our board and our executive leadership team, they are on board. They're the champions of this work. But you still get that pushback in terms of people believing, I just want to hire the best person for the role. Forgetting that our version of the best person is always biased because of our own experience. It's like, I love data. So anybody who loves data is great. Like, if you love data, you can analyze things, you can give me a trend analysis, you're amazing. So people forget that piece. I think what did it for us is really sitting down. I think Deanna mentioned, as well as Ashley, and having that conversation and truly listening. We did focus groups. We even had like a men's only focus group, that was facilitated by men, to really have an honest conversation around, why are you afraid? Why are you pushing back? What is your challenge? And that totally changed the way that we approach our work. There's a stronger emphasis on inclusion, helping people understand how we get to targets and not quotas. We have a whole conversation around why we don't use the word quotas. We use targets. We have safety targets. We have financial targets. And there's a lot of education and just language change around some of the work that we're doing because we listen. So I think just never losing the pulse of how people feel about the efforts is really important and helpful.
Just really quickly, Beatrice reminded me, I would add as well, we also did a variety of focus groups with kind of across the board. So what I recognized about our senior leadership team is that they were more comfortable amongst their peers. And so we had that conversation specifically with our ministry leadership team when we started, which is at the very top, our EVPs, our executive vice presidents, our senior vice presidents, and a couple of our VPs, and then all of our care site presidents for our hospitals across the system. So they were more comfortable in a peer-to-peer conversation about what this work looks like. And then as we kind of drill down to our director levels, our manager levels, and having those conversations, the peer groups were really beneficial for us. Again, to Beatrice's point, we also did that in terms of male or female, race and ethnicity, just trying to capture different demographics. Our veterans, we have a very large veteran population. So ensuring that we had voices from everyone who is going to be impacted, because it's a cultural shift, it's a change. And so ensuring that all voices at the table were a part of the conversation as we started to move forward.
Any last or concluding remarks on that question? We do have a couple of questions coming in from students as well. All right, wonderful. Thank you all for those replies. So here's a question from a student. Please discuss the challenges of creating a diverse workplace. Please discuss the challenges of creating a diverse workplace in a city like Denver that lacks diversity in its general population. That's and actually a statement to that. I've often heard that Denver has worked to recruit or attract more minority talent, and I've often heard that minorities don't stay too long. So I don't know if you can address that. And to the student's question, I think it's a very good question. Can you address that?
I'll do my best to address that, but I'd appreciate others to weigh in as well. So I'll say specifically for the organization that I support, you know, we have our own unique challenges. So specifically, the wealth management organization, a lot of financial advisors. So it is really tough to get female advisors, minority advisors. It is our and remains our largest challenge. So, you know, I think Denver is, you know, while it is a hub for us, it's also more diverse than other places and other cities. So, you know, think about trying to continue to recruit talent in places like, you know, Fargo, North Dakota, and Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's challenging. And so what we did is really to focus in on, okay, where can we move the needle? And where our organization has started to focus is female advisors. And so one of the things that we created is an initiative, and we call it Uplift. And it's specifically for female advisors in our wealth management organization. And the intention is to recruit, retain, and enhance the experience that they have with TIAA. So let's make sure we can recruit female advisors. And oh, by the way, let's make sure that we can keep them with our organization. And it's been a challenge. You know, it's not something that we have completely solved for, but what we've done is things like created open forums where female advisors could speak with other female advisors across the organization to say, here's what I'm doing, right? Here's how I'm balancing being a full-time working mom, but also meeting the needs of my clients. And here's what this looks like to make sure I can get it home in time to make dinner. And that's just a conversation that naturally you don't always have or feel like you can have with your peer group. We've also done things such as experimented with part-time advisors. So that is not a norm in the industry to have a part-time wealth management advisor, but it's something that we knew we didn't want to lose talent who didn't feel like they could work, you know, the 70, 80 hours a week that sometimes is required for a wealth advisor. And so getting creative on that, but while also making sure that it still makes sense for the financials of the organization. And so you can try and tackle, you know, 50 different initiatives at a time and probably get so far with each of them. And so what we did is we said, let's be maniacal about this one focus of hiring, retaining, and growing female talent within the wealth management organization. And then from there, we can then build upon that. But something we're still working on, it's still a challenge we need to overcome. But it's something that we're really dedicated to. And when you're so focused on something, what you find is you can weave that into a variety of other projects and initiatives that you're working on in tandem with that.
So I'll just add on to that a little bit. Something Beatrice had mentioned earlier is that people generally, there's bias in how we recruit and how we hire. We're always looking towards people who generally look like us or think like us, operate in the way that we do, those different kinds of things. And so for me, the conversation has been changing the way that we recruit and thinking about how we recruit and having intention. For us, in doing our benchmarking survey, we're focused more so on race and ethnicity because we realize that's our greatest opportunity. And so really having more intention behind how we recruit in that way. So I think when my recruiters say to me, well, it's really difficult or we just can't find these people. And in my mind, I'm thinking I could list 20 of African-American, Hispanic, name the group, women, whatever the case may be. So I think changing the way that we recruit, having more intention, the National Association of Health Services Executives, because we are in healthcare, is an organization geared toward African-American healthcare leaders. There's one similar for the Asian American community, the Latinx community, looking at our Black MBA, our Hispanic MBA, just different networks that we could be tapping and where we could be posting to have more intention behind the way in which we recruit has been really important. The other part of that is tapping and recruiting early on. So I've had a lot of partnerships with College Track locally here in Denver. We also partner with the Institute for Diversity and Health Equity. They do a summer enrichment program, which is a 10-week internship program at health systems across the country, specifically targeting students who are pursuing an MBA with a healthcare focus, an MPH or an MHA, and those students are racially and ethnically diverse. Again, we've talked about, by we I mean SEL, the need to really increase in that space, and particularly in healthcare. So we're looking to partner with organizations who also share that similar vision, and they can in turn provide candidates to us to help us on our workforce development initiatives in that space. We also partner with Inroads here locally, and they're focused on recruiting candidates for us who are still working on their bachelor's degree. So generally we would get them as a rising sophomore. Also focus on race and ethnicity, first generation college students, underserved populations, areas where we generally have not focused on recruiting. And so utilizing those type of partnerships, I think, and just having more intention behind the way that you recruit can start to address some of that.
Quickly add on that. My challenge has always been that we jump into solutions really quickly, even within our own organization. So one of the things we have learned is that if you're not, as an organization, on a strong journey to create an even more inclusive workplace, and you recruit people who are different, they will leave in the first year. So for me, we just need to look in the mirror. Like, it took us 5 years to learn this lesson, which is going beyond bringing people in and really looking inward and asking yourself why you don't have that diversity. Like, why is Denver not diverse? Why is Colorado not diverse? I don't know. I've only lived here for a little bit of time, but you have to look inward, and that is difficult to do because we don't want to admit that we did something wrong. We don't want to admit that we're hiring the same people who are like us. We don't want to admit that we don't treat people lightly when they make mistakes. So for me, I would say it's like 60% looking internally and really understanding why you're not diverse and why people are leaving. The other side is, why are others staying? Why do we have, 3 Black people in our entire company? And go talk to those people to really understand, what do you like about this? I feel that if I go into an environment where I don't see Black people, but I feel that people are interested in me, they value what I'm bringing to the table, they're not trying to, they don't believe that they don't see race. They see race, but they're putting in the effort to be inclusive. Even when I don't see somebody who looks like me, I don't feel isolated. I don't feel that different. So it's really important to check your culture and really understand why you don't have that diversity, because you will spend $1 billion to hire more diverse people and you will lose them and spend another $1 billion.
Yeah, that was exactly the points that I was making earlier about, if you don't have an inclusive environment, you can spend a lot of time, counting and getting more diversity into the organization, but they will not stay. But one thing I'll just add really briefly to the statements that have already been made, which I fully agree with, is that it's really removing the barriers. I believe organizations will say, oh, well, diverse candidates aren't applying, or, we don't have, it's an underrepresented population, and, there's just not enough Black engineers or Hispanic engineers, or, there's that, right there is a roadblock. When any other aspect of business, you're not going to be looking for the roadblocks, you're going to be looking to, how do I overcome the roadblocks? And so organizations, I think, use excuses that we can't find the talent, they don't apply, or whatever that is. And so if I could add anything to this conversation about that, I would say, don't let anything stop you from recruiting what you want, if that's a part of your business imperative. And if you make it lucrative, make it enticing for candidates. I mean, if we were trying to gain on the newest client, what would we do to get that organization. We splurge on them and take them to dinners, and you know what I mean? Like, what, maybe change and shift how we think about what's important to the organization and how we put a strategy forward to ensure that that happens. One of the ways that I've done that is through future workforce development. And I kept hearing, there's mostly white males who go into aviation, which is true. So I created a whole program or division around future workforce development, where the purpose was to educate, to inspire, to bring students at a younger age into careers in aviation. So they would know that it was more than just being a pilot or a flight attendant. There were 255 occupations that someone could go into in an airport. And so I created summer programs and internship programs that had a focus on recruiting students and professionals of color, that then led to us hiring them on full-time at the airport through the matriculation of those internships. It's an investment. So whatever you have to do, if enough people aren't going into aviation that are non-white male, then how do I entice them at an earlier age? So being strategic and thoughtful about what you do instead of making those excuses.
Thank you all for your comments to those questions. We are getting close to the end of our time together. How sad and unfortunate. So we have another question that has come in from one of our viewers. It's a two-part question, very related. How do you find and remain authentic in a work environment that may or may not be hostile? And a follow-up, a separate question which relates to that is, how do you deal when you are indeed in a hostile work environment? So two questions again. How do you deal with working in a hostile environment where they may not appreciate your diversity or what you bring? And how do you remain authentic to who you are in an environment where you may be one of few?
Well, let me start out by saying, value who you are. So if you are in a place where it doesn't make sense, think about that and say, do I need to be here? And am I being valued for what I can bring? So I'd say, number one, don't sell yourself short on the value that you can bring to an organization. So as you look for organizations to join, you be asking questions about what do you do to support this talent? What does it look like? What do these conversations look like? So that should be a part of, what you look for in an organization. I would say, again, bringing your authentic self, I think, starts with trust. So how are you building trust with others? How are you having those conversations so that you can have a real life discussion with your boss or your leadership team or even your team? Because I think that's important. If you have trust, you can then have the right conversations at the right time. But it does take time. It takes work on your end. It takes work on the other person's end, and that all has to be a part of the equation. So I would say, make sure that that's a part of what you're looking at when you look at organizations, because as my friends on the panelists mentioned that I'm in complete agreement with, you may join an organization and then say, why am I here? This doesn't make sense. This doesn't fit me. And that's something that an organization needs to get right. And they have to do that from the top of the house. And so it's important that you stay with an organization that you feel valued with, that you can contribute, because that's what makes life interesting, and that's what makes the days really great, is when you're working with people who where you're challenged and you're engaged.
Anyone else like to answer the question? Or
I was going to add that the alternative to not being your authentic self is covering, which is suppressing, behavior or how you show up for fear of being stereotyped or for fear of triggering a stereotype about yourself. And that is draining. I mean, as somebody in the mining,
people do it every day.
Exactly. As somebody in the mining industry, I have covered before earlier on in my career, but today I really don't care, because I have come to the understanding that it is too much work on my part, trying to fit in, trying to be not, you know, I'm very feminine, and in a mining industry where you're underground, or, you know, you're in a pit, you feel that you need to show up differently. I would say that as somebody who has gone there and back, if you're on this call and you're now about to go into your career, I would say just go for it and be your authentic self, because there really is nothing more, you know, rewarding than that, instead of trying to fit in. And with this new generation that is coming into the workforce, everybody knows that you are your best authentic selves. And so do not sell yourself short, and really come into the workplace with your full capability and who you are.
I think it really, I agree with you, Beatrice. It's non-negotiable for me to be my authentic self. And I can tell you it's both served me and it has been a detractor from me. Again, I'm very vocal, direct, you know, straightforward. And
but
that
those are
does
all
not,
things that are appreciated in amongst men, right? So
yeah, exactly. But coming from a Black woman, it does not always sit well with individuals. And so I have been a part of a hostile work environment where I was not respected and valued, but I've also been a part of a very inclusive environment where I was pushed forward and supported and, you know, very much appreciated. So I think it boils down to what Deanna said. I don't know if I said that it's critical, the culture or the environment that you're in, because if you find yourself in an environment that wants you to watch your facial expressions, or wants you to you know, not send that in an email, and wants you to cover, or wants you to be less than yourself, because I'm thinking, wait, what? You read what in my facial expression? You didn't ask me, but you assumed that I meant this when you didn't ask me. That's not a place where you want to be in. I was just a part of a panel that was about workplace bullying, and it's real. And it was all geared toward professionals of color, with, you know, who have been targeted. And so it's not as easy to say, you know, it's a risk. It is a risk to show up in your as your authentic self at times. It is a risk. And so I want to be honest about that risk, but it boils down to you knowing who you are, not faltering in who you are. And if the organization is not supportive of that and doesn't see that as a strength, then you may not be in the right place. And that may not be an easy choice, but we have to make choices. And I think in this environment, people can make choices about where they want to be.
I think just
sorry, I agree with everything on the panel. The only thing I just really highlighted in terms of what Deanna said is really do your homework and do your research. Some organizations can be really good at window dressing, so even despite what's on their website, that may not be your experience when they get there, but I would say do research in terms of their website and what their culture is and what their values are and what their mission is. If you happen to know individuals who may already work at an organization you're interested in or have previously, definitely leverage that resource as well. Glassdoor, there are other avenues, but I think it's generally better if you know people who have worked at those organizations previously or currently, and then just doing your due diligence in terms of what's available to you about that organization online is helpful. And sometimes you just don't know until you know when you get there. And also to everyone else's point, if you get there and decide it's not for you, it's probably not for you, and you can kind of course correct at that point. But just wanted to add that quick point.
You stole my response, Ashley.
So we're all thinking the same thing.
Well
Yeah.
said.
Again, preaching to the choir. We have reached our time limit, and out of respect for everyone's time and everyone's schedules, we are going to conclude. I thank you all so much for being here today. Ron, do you have any concluding remarks?
Other than thank you so much, that was an awesome discussion. I do want to just remind everyone that this will be recorded, so we'll be posting it on the Daniels at DU YouTube page. It's just Daniels at DU, and that way, other students who couldn't join us today can still get some value out of this. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.